conducting. We have been conducting every day, and we will be doing so in this first Ashra. First of all, I would like to call upon Mehdi Fayaz to recite the Quran for us, please.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wajil faraj.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والسماء والطارق وما أدراك ما الطارق النجم الثاقب إن كل نفس لما عليها حافظ فلينظر الإنسان مما خلق من ماء دافق يخرج من بين الصلب والترائب إنه على رجعه لقادر يوم تبلى السرائر فما له من قوة ولا ناصر والسماء ذات الرجع والأرض ذات الصدع إنهم يكيدون كيدا وأكيد كيدا فمهل الكافرين أمهلهم رويدا صدق الله العلي العظيم.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wajil faraj. Jazakallah, mashallah.
MashaAllah, that was a wonderful recitation. Thank you, Mehdi. Now I would like to call up on Ali Abbas Syed to recite a salam for us.
Allahumma salli ala
ala
Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wajil faraj.
آج بھی زینب کی آتی ہے صدا بھائی حسین آج بھی زینب کی آتی ہے صدا بھائی حسین تیرا چہرہ تیری آنکھیں بھول کب پائی حسین آج بھی زینب کی آتی ہے صدا بھائی حسین چلتے ناقے سے گرایا خود کو جلتی ریت پر چلتے ناقے سے گرایا خود کو جلتی ریت پر گھٹنیوں کے بل میں تیری لاش تک آئی حسین آج بھی زینب کی آتی ہے صدا بھائی حسین بس میں گھبرائی تھی خنجر تجھ پہ چلتا دیکھ کر بس میں گھبرائی تھی خنجر تجھ پہ چلتا دیکھ کر پھر کسی مشکل میں ہی میں نہ گھبرائی حسین آج بھی زینب کی آتی ہے صدا بھائی حسین. کون تھا جو مرنے والوں میں نہیں تھا خوبرو؟ کون تھا جو مرنے والوں میں نہیں تھا خوبرو؟ بھولنے بیٹھی تو کس کس کی نہ یاد آئی حسین. آج بھی زینب کی آتی ہے صدا بھائی حسین. بہہ رہے تھے آنکھ سے آنسو تیری رخصت کے وقت. بہہ رہے تھے آنکھ سے آنسو تیری رخصت کے وقت. پھر کوئی آنسو نہ ٹپکا آنکھ پھترائی حسین. آج بھی زینب کی آتی ہے صدا بھائی حسین. ہاتھ میں کوزے لیے سب آسماں تپتے رہے. ہاتھ میں کوزے لیے سب آسماں تکتے رہے. ابر نے ایک بوند پانی کی نہ برسائی حسین. آج بھی زینب کی آتی ہے صدا بھائی حسین. تیرا چہرہ تیری آنکھیں پھول کب پائی حسین. آج بھی زینب کی آتی ہے صدا بھائی حسین. صلوات.
اللهم صل على
على
محمد وعلى
محمد
آل
وعلى
محمد
محمد وعجل فرجه.
Now I would like to welcome Maulana Syed Bilal Rizvi to enlighten us with his lecture with a loud salawat.
اللهم صل
صل
على
على
محمد وعلى
محمد
آل
وعلى
محمد.
محمد وعجل فرجه.
فاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والحمد لله الأول بلا أول كان قبله والآخر بلا آخر يكون بعده الذي قصرت عن رؤيته أبصار الناظرين وعجزت عن نعته أوهام الواصفين. والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء وخاتم المرسلين سيدنا وحبيبنا أبي القاسم محمد.
اللهم صل على
اللهم صل
محمد
على
وعلى
محمد
محمد
وعلى
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 آل
محمد.
بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الصادقين والذين ذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا.
اللهم صل
اللهم
على
صل
محمد
وسلم
وعلى
وزد
محمد
وبارك على
وعجل فرجه.
صاحب الدعوة النبوية والصولة الحيدرية والإسمة الفاطمية والحلم الحسنية والشجاعة الحسينية والعبادة السجادية والمآثر الباقرية والآثار الجعفرية والعلوم الكادمية والحجج الرضوية والجود الثقبية والنقابة النقبية والهيبة العسكرية والغيبة الإلهية. اللهم عجل فرجه وسهل مخرجه. أما بعد، فقد قال الإمام جعفر الصادق: السلام عليك يا وارث إبراهيم خليل الله. صدق مولانا الإمام جعفر الصادق عليه السلام.
اللهم
صل على
صل على
محمد
محمد
وعلى
وآل
آل
محمد.
محمد.
نعرہ تکبیر،
الله
الله
أكبر.
أكبر.
نعرہ رسالت،
يا رسول الله.
نعرہ حیدری.
يا
holy.
علي.
You're going to have to bear with my voice today. It's 4:30 in the morning over here. It's my 5th program and we've had programs all night. The subject continues Ziyaratul Waritha. You see, as I mentioned before, that there are numerous sources one can go towards when they want to understand the greatness of Sayyid al-Shuhada. You find there are many hadith on the subject. It's stated, for example, one day as Rasulullah was upon the minbar, you find that Sayyid al-Shuhada, he enters into the mosque of the Prophet. So what does Rasulullah do? Rasulullah, he gets off the minbar, he brings Husayn into his arms and he comes back upon the minbar. But now the khutbah, it wasn't the same khutbah. He says, Hada Husaynun fa'arifuhu wansuruhu. He says, this is Husayn, recognize Husayn and support Husayn. You see over here in the Arabic, when he said fa'arifuhu, this was an amr, this was a command, that it becomes incumbent upon the Muslims to recognize who Husayn was, whether it is from the text of the hadith or whether it is from the text of the Quran. Even the Quran has areas which emphasize the greatness of Husayn. When the Quran says, Wal Fajr walayalin ashar wa shaf'i wal watar, by the daybreak and by the 10 nights, Imam Sadiq says this surah is Surah al-Husayn. And the one who wants the status to be with Husayn should recite this chapter, for the movement of Husayn is within this chapter. And similarly, continuing along this lines of discussion, we find we have much within the area of ziyarat literature. In particular, we have Ziyaratul Waritha. Ziyaratul Waritha is a text which should be recited constantly, particularly on Laylatul Jummah, Friday nights, or what we are accustomed to calling it Thursday nights based upon our viewpoint. But you find it has a great emphasis. And we examine the first 2 lines of this ziyarah. We examine the line that says, Assalamu alayka ya waritha Adam safwatillah. And yesterday we examined the line, Assalamu alayka ya waritha Nuhin Nabiyallah. Now, I am aware that there are certain texts of the ziyarat that instead of saying Assalamu alayka ya waritha Nuhin Nabiyallah, they say Assalamu alayka ya waritha Nuhin Najiballah. Najib is the one who is pure in Arabic. That the one who is pure and honored is Najib. Now, even if we take this as the sifa when Imam al-Husayn is described, you find this refers to the purity of Sayyid al-Shuhada. So either way, you find that it goes and it refers towards Sayyid al-Shuhada. Now, today's line of examination, Assalamu alayka ya waritha Ibrahim Khalilillah. There are many things which Nabi Ibrahim, he represents in the tradition within the Quran and across different faiths. Because no matter what faith you look at, whether Islam or Christianity or Judaism, you find that Ibrahim is seen as a common source, and in many ways he is seen as the father of Tawheed. That although the Anbiya before Ibrahim, they gave the message of Tawheed, but Ibrahim, through the incidents within his life, He manifested this reality and he established this reality. That when you look within Surah Al-Anbiya in chapter 21 within the Quran, you find that Nabi Ibrahim, he begins to speak towards his people. And as Nabi Ibrahim is speaking towards his people, he says, قَالَ أَفَتَعْبُدُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ مَنْ لَا يَنْفَعُكُمْ شَيْئًا وَلَا يَضُرُّكُمْ. That do you worship besides Allah those things which will not bring you any benefit, nor do they cause you harm, meaning these things, they have no impact. When he said this line, you find that over here within this incident, and we'll relate it towards Sayyid al-Shuhada, the reply and the method of the Dalimeen and the oppressors, it becomes clear. Because Nabi Ibrahim, with the statement, he replied, he gave an answer in a mantiki language, in a logical language. But you find the reply of the Dalimeen to logic is what the reply the reply Ibrahim receives in the Quran from Nimrud. The Quran says, they say to him, Uffin lakum walima ta'buduna min dunillah afala ta'qilun. Ibrahim says that, why do you worship besides Allah? Do you not have aql? They replied by saying, Qalu harriquhu wansuru alihatakum. They say that burn Ibrahim. You see over here that Ibrahim, when he used reason to speak towards them, it was the way of the Dalimeen. When the Hujjah of Allah speaks with ilm, they would reply with violence towards the Hujjah of Allah. And you find that anywhere ilm is replied with violence, this is the path of Nimrud, this is the path of Yazid. That Yazid, he utilized the same methods as well. That Sayyid al-Shuhada, when he goes towards Makkah, of course, Imam al-Husayn, he leaves Medina, he goes towards Makkah, and he arrives in Makkah on the 3rd of Sha'ban, the year before he is martyred, in the year 60 after the migration of the Prophet. Over there, what Imam al-Husayn he did is that Imam al-Husayn would preach to the people, that he would see if the Muslim Ummah would be able to be receptive towards his message. But how did Yazid reply? Yazid, he replies by sending an individual to try and assassinate the Imam in the precincts of the Kaaba. Within the precincts of the Kaaba, you find within the laws of Islam, killing an insect intentionally is not allowed. But now he had sent somebody to kill the grandson of the Prophet. So you find that number one, Nabi Nimrud is the founder of Tawheed in many ways, and he established Tawheed, that the Kaaba, the symbol of Tawheed, was built by Nimrud. That the Kaaba in many ways is the symbol of Tawheed. That's why oftentimes the Imam is compared with the Kaaba in many traditions. The tradition, it says, Ya Ali, anta bimanzilat al-Kaaba. That Ali, your example is like the example of the Kaaba. You see, there is a hidden reality within this. All of these hadith have a batini and esoteric nature describing them. That Allah is showing that in the way the Kaaba is the symbol of Tawheed. And it is a symbol, O Muslims, that if you do not face the Kaaba, if you do not acknowledge the reality of the Kaaba, you find that you are falling short in your deen. In the same way, if you do not acknowledge the Imam of your time, you're falling short in your deen. There are many different traditions related towards the Kaaba and towards the Imam of the time, whether it is the birth of Amir al-Mu'mineen coming into the Kaaba, whether it is the traditions that say that a person's Hajj is not accepted until he meets the Imam of the time. So there are many hadith which link the idea of the Imam towards the Kaaba, but time is against me and I don't have time to expand on many of these concepts. So you find Ibrahim is the one who established Tawheed. Ibrahim is the one who stands up against Nimrud. Ibrahim is that individual who was considered that prophet who was Khalil Allah. You see, that Khalil Allah says that Ibrahim is the friend of Allah. But oftentimes Habib Allah is translated as the friend of Allah as well. even though I prefer the translation, the beloved of Allah, because it's more accurate. But if we construe both of them as the general category of friendship, the question comes up is that what is the difference between Khalilullah and Habibullah? Khalilullah is that friend that the friend has more love for the other friend. Whereas Habibullah is the one when the other friend has more love for the Habib. That this is the difference between Ibrahim and Rasulullah. Ibrahim is Khalilullah, that the love of Ibrahim, but you find Rasulullah is Habibullah, the beloved of Allah. So there are many questions that come up. That why was Ibrahim called Khalilullah? And when you look in the traditions of Ahlul Bayt, there are many different traditions upon this subject. For example, there's a tradition of Imam al-Rida, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
He narrates in Ilal al-Shara'i. He says that one of the reasons why Ibrahim was called Khalilullah, the friend of Allah, is because of the generosity of Ibrahim. That Ibrahim, before he would go and eat a meal, he would say, is there anyone who wants to become my guest? So you find this is one reason. The other reason the tradition says is because Ibrahim, he had an immense amount of tawakkul and trust in Allah. You see, the generosity of Ibrahim is that Ibrahim, it is stated, he never ate a meal in life without a guest over there. But you find, as I said it before, if Husayn is the warith of each of these anbiya, then all of the qualities in these anbiya are found in Sayyid al-Shuhada at the maximum level of reality. If Ibrahim is known for generosity, then history must record the generosity of Husayn. That, it's stated one day that Sayyid al-Shuhada, he would see a boy who was a slave. That slave boy would take a piece of bread, he would eat the piece of bread. And then he would take another piece of bread and give it next to the dog to him. He takes a piece of bread and he gives it to the dog next to him. And this manner, Imam al-Husayn watches that he has his meal. Sayyid al-Shuhada, he goes towards him. He says that, where is your master? Call your master. The slave boy, he calls his master. Sayyid al-Shuhada says, I want to buy that slave. The man says, you are the grandson of the Prophet, I'll give him to you. The Imam says, no, this is your haqq, I want to buy him. Sayyid al-Shuhada, he buys him. He says that you are free in the way of Allah and I bought this garden for you. That boy, he says, oh, grandson of the Prophet, what did I do that you did this act? The Imam said that you have so much mercy within your heart that you could not handle seeing an animal hungry right next to you. It is for this reason I have freed you at this moment. You find that this is one example of the generosity of Husayn. No, another example. It's stated that one day an individual knocks at the door of Sayyid al-Shuhada. You know what the Imam does? The Imam, from behind the door, he takes his hand out and he gives towards that man. They say, oh Sayyid al-Shuhada, that why don't you show yourself to the man? The Imam replies by saying, it was difficult for that man to come and ask me. I didn't want to embarrass him by looking towards him. So I gave in this manner where my identity was concealed and he still received. That these were the Imams of Ahlul Bayt. And indeed, one of the most powerful moments that describes this reality is on the 11th of Muharram. Upon the 11th of Muharram, it's stated that the army of Umar bin Sa'ad would look at the body of Sayyid al-Shuhada and count the wounds upon the body of Sayyid al-Shuhada. That each of them would make claims that we caused this wound and we caused that wound. But it's stated on the back of Imam al-Husayn, there were bruises which they don't understand where these bruises they came from. So they call Imam Zainul Abidin. When they call Imam Zainul Abidin, they say, "Oh Ali ibn al-Husayn, what are these bruises upon the back of your father? For we didn't cause these bruises upon his back." Imam Zainul Abidin replies by saying that these are those bruises that when my father would go in the middle of the night towards the fuqara and the poor of Medina, he would carry the rice or the food or the bread upon his back and he would give towards the fuqara of Medina.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu
You
Akbar.
see, this was the seerat of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. This same idea, these same scars and the traditions are found in the back of Zainul Abidin. They're found on the back of Ali bin Abi Talib. That you find this was the seerah and the method of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. So Ibrahim is called Khalilullah because of his generosity. But no, we have another tradition. That tradition, it states that one day Ibrahim, he hears someone doing the tasbih of Allah. As they were doing the tasbih of Allah, they said, Subuhun Quddusun Rabbul Malaikati Warruh. They said, free from defects and sanctified is the Lord of the angels and the Ruh and the Spirit. Ibrahim, he says, never have I heard a tasbih and a glorification of Allah like this in my life. Ibrahim, he tries to go and find that individual who is doing that tasbih. He says, oh man, teach me this tasbih. He says, I'll teach you the tasbih, but it's going to cost you. What do you have? Ibrahim says, all I have is my flock of sheep. The man says, give me half your sheep and I'll repeat the tasbih. Ibrahim, he gives half the sheep away. He says, Subuhun Quddusun Rabbul Malaikati Warruh, but the heart of Ibrahim is not satisfied. You see, the heart of a lover is never satisfied with just taking the name of their beloved. They always desire to take that name more and they're never satisfied with that name. So you find Ibrahim says, no, can you repeat it? He says, give me the other half. Ibrahim gives the other half. He says, Subuhun Quddusun Rabbul Malaikati Warruh. After that, you find Ibrahim says, no, repeat it one more time. He says, you don't have any sheep. Ibrahim says, I will spend half my life becoming your servant. That to learn the tasbih and the dhikr of Allah, Ibrahim was willing to give away half his life. But the warith of Ibrahim wasn't learning the tasbih and the dhikr. The warith of Ibrahim was saving the tasbih and the dhikr of Allah on the plains of Karbala. That you see, one of the areas of Sayyid al-Shuhada on the day of Ashura are the du'as and the dhikr of Sayyid al-Shuhada on the day of Ashura. That what more can I say that Sayyid al-Shuhada on the day of Ashura after Salatul Fajr, he begins the day of Ashura with dua. And you know what dua Imam al-Husayn says? It's one of the most powerful duas within Islamic history. Imam al-Husayn says, Allahumma anta thiqati fi kulli karbin wa raja'i fi kulli shidda wa anta li fi kulli amrin nazala bi thiqatun wa udda wa kam min hammin yad'ufu fihi al-fu'ad. The Imam, he says, oh Allah, that in every trial and tribulation, you are the one that I rely on. And oh Allah, in every hardship, you are my hope. And oh Allah, in every affair that comes upon me, oh Allah, you are the one who I lean upon, oh Allah. And then he says, وَكَمْ مِنْ هَمٍّ يَدْعُفُ فِيهِ الْفُؤَادُ وَتَقِلُّ فِيهِ الْهِيلَةُ ويخذل فيه الصديق ويشمت فيه العدو أنزلته بك وشكوته إليك رغبة مني إليك عمن سواك فكشفته وفرجته فأنت ولي كل نعمة ومنتهى كل رغبة. The Imam says, oh Allah, How many sorrows are there that they weaken the heart, and the solutions you can't find, and your friends they leave and dispute you, and your enemies they gather. But oh Allah, at this moment I have come towards your doorstep, and I desire no one except you. So cure my pains, oh Allah, and open these pains, for you are the owner and the possessor of every blessing, and you are the muntaha and the endpoint of every hope, oh Allah. That have you ever heard a dua like this? That this is the dua of Husayn on the day of Ashura in the plains of Karbala. So you find Ibrahim has the reality of Khalil. If for the reasons that I mentioned, Ibrahim is Khalil because of his generosity, because of his love for the dhikr of Allah, then you find Sayyid al-Shuhada has a greater right of being called the Khalil of Allah. But you find there is one more area within the life of Ibrahim, which has been emphasized within the Quran. And when you look within the Quran and you look in chapter 37, Surah As-Safat, and you begin in verse 101, you find the discussion, it begins about one of the most difficult tasks that anyone can undertake. And that is the task of sacrifice. You see, we have a general principle that the closer one is towards Allah, the more difficulties they face. It's stated that one day a man, Rasulullah, he visits that man. And when Rasulullah visits that man says, "Oh Rasulullah, I don't have any hardship." To the point that one day there was an egg upon my table. That egg, it fell. And as it was falling, it got caught on a nail, on two nails, and it doesn't hit the ground. That is how lucky I am. You know what Rasulullah did? Rasulullah, he leaves his house. He says a believer is not a believer unless they have a challenge once every 40 days. But the closer one goes towards Allah, you find the more their challenges, they increase. And I'm running out of time, but there are many hadith upon the subject. So you find over here that the Quran, it says that after Ibrahim, for so many years praying for a son, that now Ibrahim has a son, Ismail. The Quran, it says that فَلَمَّا بَلَغَ مَعَهُ السَّعْيَ قَالَ يَا بُنَيَّ إِنِّي أَرَى فِي الْمَنَامِ أَنِّي أَذْبَحُكَ فَانْظُرْ مَاذَا تَرَى. So over here, the Quran, it says that Ibrahim, he speaks to Ismail. He says, "Oh Ismail, I saw within my dream that I'm slaughtering you." See, from this verse, we understand fundamentally that the dream of a prophet is different than our dreams. That if in our dream we saw ourselves slaughtering someone, would this be halal to do it? Would this even be allowed? It wouldn't be. But the reality of a prophet, even in his dreams, is different than you and I. Then how can some people think our reality is the same as the prophet when we are awake? That if even within our dreams we're not alike, then how will we be the same when we're awake? So you find Ibrahim, he also shows a method of parenting. Ibrahim doesn't force his son and say, "Oh my son, I'm going to slaughter you." But no, as a father, Ibrahim, he says, "Oh my son, what do you think?" You see, the Quran is showing that there needs to be a communication between a father and a son, between a parent and a children. Even though Ibrahim is the Hujjat of Allah, Sayyid al-Shuhada on the day of Ashura, he would speak towards Ali Akbar, he would speak towards Qasim. You find he says, "What do you think?" Over here, Ismail, who is a prophet, he says, قَالَ يَا أَبَتِي إِفْعَلْ مَا تُؤْمَرْ سَتَجِدُونِي إِنْ شَاءَ اللَّهِ مِنَ الصَّابِرِينَ. That, "Oh Allah, my father, do as you're commanded, and insha'Allah, you will find me patient." Let me ask you a question. That when you are patient, correct, you are not patient in tasks that you enjoy. Because something you enjoy, it doesn't require patience. It comes naturally towards you. When Ismail was facing death, Ismail says, oh my father, you will find me patient. You will find me having sabr because this is a thing which is bitter. But when Hazrat Qasim was asked, Kayf al-maut indak, that how is death towards you? He didn't say that I am being patient. This is something bitter. No, he says, al-maut ahla min al-asal. That death to me is sweeter than honey. So you find over here is this reality that Hazrat Ismail, he says to his father that inshallah you will find me amongst the patient. And you find that over here that there is an incident which is recorded of Hazrat Ali Akbar alayhi salam, that one day Sayyid al-Shuhada, as they approach Karbala, Hazrat Ali Akbar, he sees the Imam saying, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. And the Imam, he was repeating this line. As the Imam was repeating this line, you find that Hazrat Ali Akbar says, oh my father, what occurred? Imam al-Husayn, he tells them the situation. Hazrat Ali Akbar says, oh father, are we not on haq? Imam al-Husayn says, yes, oh Akbar, we are on haq. Ali Akbar, he says, oh my father, then it doesn't matter if we go towards death or death comes towards us. You see, Ibrahim, he faced challenge after challenge. But his heart was one which relied upon Allah. Even when it's stated, correct, according to the traditions, that when Ibrahim was thrown into the fire by Nimrud, Jibreel comes towards Ibrahim. He says, oh Ibrahim, that do you need any help? Ibrahim says, yes, I need help, but you are not the one who will help me. He says, Ya Allahu, Ya Ahadu, Ya Wahidu, Ya Samadu, Ya Man Lam Yalid wa Lam Yulad. Allahumma inni as'aluka bihaqqi Muhammadin wa Aliyan wa Fatimata wal Hasani wal Husayn najjaytani min an-nar. That he says, oh Allah, help me at this moment. I say Ibrahim, when he was in the fire, he rejected the help of one angel. But look at the warith of Ibrahim in Karbala. That when Jibreel comes towards Sayyid al-Shuhada, that they say that Allah has given 4,000 angels to support you, O Husayn. Imam al-Husayn says, no, that it is not what I am aiming for at this moment. And it's stated within the traditions of Kamilu Ziyarat that these angels, they stay at the spot where Sayyid al-Shuhada was killed. And when any of the Zayireen come towards the ziyarah of Sayyid al-Shuhada, they do the istighfar for those Zayireen. So you find we have the line, Assalamu alayka, Ya Warita Ibrahim Khalilullah. You see, Ibrahim was tested. But at the end of the day, you find that Ibrahim as a father, that when he went to go slaughter Ismail, it stated that there was a blindfold on Ibrahim. And then Ibrahim, he said that, oh Ismail, put your cheek on the ground, but face the other way so I don't have to look at you, oh Ismail. It's stated in some traditions that before Ismail got replaced with a ram, that a part of the knife went towards the neck of Ismail. It's stated that Hajra couldn't handle this, and she goes and she begins to cry. But I say, oh Hajra, you didn't see what Layla saw with Ali Akbar. Oh Hajra, you didn't see what Farwa saw with Qasim, that upon this night we remember the musibah of the son of Imam al-Hassan. You know, it's stated that when Imam al-Hassan was poisoned and Imam al-Hassan was upon his deathbed, Sayyid al-Shuhada, he goes towards Imam al-Hassan, he begins to cry. Imam al-Hassan says, Ya Aba Abdullah, Atabki alayya abki alayk. He says, "O Aba Abdullah, do you cry over me? I cry over you, for there is no day like your day, O Husayn." Then Imam al-Husayn, he goes, it's stated at that time, there was a 2.5-year-old boy who comes to the chest of Imam al-Hasan. Farwa wants to remove that boy. Imam al-Hasan says that let my Qasim be upon his father's chest. You see, this is Qasim. Qasim is the one who in his appearance, he resembled Imam al-Hasan. You say that Imam al-Husayn on the night before Ashura, he would go through the list of all those who would be martyred. He takes the name of Abbas, Qasim is waiting. He takes the name of Akbar, Qasim is waiting. He even takes the name of the 6-month Ali Asghar, Qasim. He goes towards his uncle. He says, "Oh, my uncle, then why is my name not on here?" Imam al-Hasan, he says, "Kayf al-maut indak?" That, "Oh Qasim, how is death towards you?" Qasim, he says, "Al-maut ahla min al-asal." Oh my uncle, it's sweeter than honey towards me. I'll explain why Imam al-Husayn only asked Hazrat Qasim near the end of the musibah. It's stated the day of Ashura it comes. When the day of Ashura it comes, everyone, they keep going one by one towards the Maqtal. But Qasim, he goes, the Imam doesn't give him permission. Qasim, he goes, the Imam doesn't give him permission. At one point, Qasim with tears, Farwa, she sees Qasim. She says, "Oh Qasim, when your father was passing away, he gave this message, he gave this letter, he gave this ta'weez to give towards your uncle." You find Qasim, he takes the letter of Imam al-Hasan, he takes it towards Sayyid al-Shuhada. You know what it said? It says that when Sayyid al-Shuhada is alone, one part of it was addressing Qasim. It says, "Ya Qasim, Ya waladi, إذا وجدت عمك الحسين وحيدا غريبا فريدا عطشانا." That, "Oh Qasim, when you find your uncle Hussein, be my support and give him this letter." Imam al-Hussein, he takes the letter of Imam al-Hassan, he begins to cry. The Maqatil, they say at that moment, فَغَشِيَ عَلَيْهِمَا, that Qasim and Imam al-Hassan, they fall, like Qasim and Imam al-Hussein, they fall unconscious as they're crying. You find Sayyid al-Shuhada, he places the amama upon the head of Qasim, but he says, "Oh Qasim, before you go towards the Maqtal, go and bid farewell towards your aunt Zainab, O Qasim." That when Qasim, he goes towards Sayyida Zainab, some traditions state that Sayyida Zainab, she says, "Are you my brother Hassan?" At this moment, that Qasim, he resembled Imam al-Hassan, that she was reminded of her brother. You find after that, Qasim, he goes towards the battlefield. He begins to fight. He begins to fight. You know, it's stated that they struck the head of Qasim, but Qasim didn't fall like the other Shuhada. Qasim, when they struck the head of Qasim, it's stated that the foot of Qasim got caught in the saddle of the horse, that the horse of Qasim would go through the plains of Karbala. The body of Qasim would be broken in towards pieces. Sheikh Jafar Shushtari says that the reason why Qasim was asked that how is death towards you is that every shaheed, their body was trampled after they died. But Qasim is that shaheed, that the body of Qasim was broken to pieces while Qasim was alive. Sayyid al-Shuhada, he goes to the body of Qasim, he puts his abba on the ground, he collects the broken pieces of Qasim. Over here, Sayyid al-Shuhada, he says, "Oh Qasim, what will I tell your mother Farwa, O Qasim?" ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. Ya Allah, we ask through the right of Sayyid al-Shuhada, We ask through the right of those mothers in Karbala that wherever the followers of Ahlul Bayt are sick and ailing, help them. Wherever they are in need of du'as, Ya Allah, grant them their du'as. Ya Allah, grant them the intercession of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. Ya Allah, grant us the opportunity to continue to serve Muhammad and Ali Muhammad, and we pray for the hastening of the reappearance of the master of our time. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل
محمد جل فرجهم Ya Husayn. Now I would like to invite Muhammad Abbas to recite the Nahl for us.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وعجل فرجه.
يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين کیا نبی کا سا نہیں ہوں کیا نبی کا نواسا نہیں ہوں مجھ پہ کیوں بندے کرتے ہو پانی کیا محمد کا پیارا نہیں ہوں وہ مدینہ جہاں میرا گھر ہے اور مسجد میں اس گھر کا در ہے وہ مدینہ جہاں میرا گھر ہے اور مسجد میں اس گھر کا در ہے کیا میں اس گھر میں کھیلا نہیں ہوں کیا میں اس گھر میں کھیلا نہیں ہوں کیا میں اس گھر میں کھیلا نہیں ہوں کیا نبی کا نواسا نہیں ہوں پہ کیوں بندے کرتے پانی کیا محمد کا پیارا نہیں ہوں چکیاں پیس کر ماں نے پالا مجھ کو نانا نے جھولا جھلایا چکیاں پیس کر ماں نے پالا مجھ کو نانا نے جھولا جھلایا اپنا بچپن میں بھولا نہیں ہوں اپنا بچپن میں بھولا نہیں ہوں اپنا بچپن میں بھولا نہیں ہوں کیا نبی کا نواسا نہیں ہوں مجھ پہ کیوں بندے کرتے ہو پانی کیا محمد کا پیارا نہیں ہوں مجھ پہ کیوں بندے کرتے ہو پانی کیا محمد کا پیارا نہیں ہوں یا حسین
Ya Husayn.
MashaAllah.
Allahumma salli
اللهم
ala
صل
على
على
محمد
محمد وعلى محمد
محمد وعجل فرجه.
السلام عليك يا رسول الله السلام عليك يا نبي الله السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام عليك يا علي أمير المؤمنين السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهرة سيدة النساء العالمين السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين السلام عليك يا علي بن الحسين السلام عليك يا محمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي. السلام عليك يا صاحب العصر والزمان، الأمان الأمان الأمان. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن، السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان. أجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وزخورك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
اللهم
اللهم
صل على
محمد وعلى
محمد
محمد
وعلى
وعجل فرج